Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And we are here today again back on prabhupadinitiation.blogspot.com. And my name is Madhavananda Das, and I am going through this contribution of compilation of quotes of Prabhupada that I have posted online. It is more or less a book. It's divided up into quite a few different chapters covering all the different aspects of the initiation instructions from Srila Prabhupada regarding initiation, particularly after his departure in 1977. So there are many resources online that you can find. This will be just another one, but I don't say really just another one. I think this one I really gave my heart and soul into this. I put years of research into this compilation, and with the help of a friend, Vaishnav Thakur Prabhu in Austria, he did editing and diacritical marks, which was a lot of work. So thanks to Vaishnav Thakur for his help. So we put this up online. There it is. And going through this, making videos, talking about it. So this is analysis of all the different aspects. It addresses all the various arguments. Like I said, there's many different papers out there and presentations that have been made over the years by very different devotees. And, each one has its own flavor and its own, aspect, its own way of dealing with the subject matter. So this is my presentation is just another perspective on this subject matter, but I feel I tried to make it as clear as possible. It can be a little confusing for some people because there's different statements of Prabhupada according to different time and places. So unfortunately, it seems like 99% of the devotees, or 95 or 99% of devotees, at least in my estimation, it seems that the large majority of devotees that just haven't understood this information. They don't take the time to really research it because they're just they're just accepting the popular opinion of Iskcon and going along with the current system, accepting all these men as initiating gurus, these men who have been voted into the position. So there's so many different points here that clarify on this, this perspective, this understanding of Prabhupada as the initiating spiritual master. How we can clarify, how we can put all this into a clearer perspective to make it very clear that, you would think that for most devotees it would be just very clear. It would be very simple. Prabhupada is a pure devotee, and he gave a letter on a directive to the whole society on July 9th to continue on with this system of 11 Ritviks performing initiations on his behalf. So, but most of the devotees don't get it, and I think that's what I'll speak on in this episode is. The subject matter, like they say, Krishna consciousness is simple for the, what do they say, simple for the pure, or simple for the simple, but complicated for those who have material motives, more or less. So you would think that most of the devotees, it would be very clear and simple to them that Prabhupada is the one that really we should be accepting as the initiator, because the initiator guru must be a pure devotee, and he's to be worshipped as good as God, and one should have only one initiating spiritual master. So it should make common sense to most people that an institution should only have one initiating spiritual master also. So if the Prabhupada disciples that felt that they were qualified to, and authorized by Prabhupada to initiate their own disciples, if they were actually following in Prabhupada's footsteps, then they would go out and establish their own branch, their own institution, write their own books, just like Prabhupada did. So Prabhupada set up Iskcon. He is the spiritual master and Acharya for Iskcon. He is the one whose Guru Puja we're doing every day. And that will continue. I mean, what's going to happen when, the first generation of Prabhupada disciples all pass on? and all these, persons who were initiating gurus will have passed away. Well, maybe Iskcon will continue rubber stamping more initiating gurus, but Prabhupada's Guru Puja will continue. I don't see where Prabhupada's Murti is going to be replaced with somebody else. Prabhupada has been established in all the Iskcon temples. His Guru Puja has been established as a daily practice, and that's going to go on for is for the foreseeable future, for maybe even thousands of years, as long as Iskcon continues to exist. So it should be clear to most devotees that actually Prabhupada is the one that we're doing Guru Puja for. Prabhupada is the one that we're worshiping, and Prabhupada should be the one who we're all worshiping. Iskcon has more or less concocted a system where we have these multiple gurus. When I first came into Iskcon, they were actually doing multiple Guru Pujas every morning. They would put a screen around Prabhupada's Murti, and at first they would do a Prabhupada Guru Puja, then after Prabhupada Guru Puja they put a screen around Prabhupada's Murti, like one of those Chinese folding screens to separate Prabhupada, and then they had several different tables, and each table was a picture of different so-called initiating gurus of Iskcon, and so each little group of devotees was doing their own little Guru Puja for their own so-called initiating guru. So that was done away with eventually, because all these things just don't work. It's just, you have an institution, it's created, factions and divisions and different groups and things, and Iskcon should be united. What is the uniting factor is that we're all God brothers and God sisters under the same spiritual master. But when you've had, Iskcon has been fractioned up into so many different groups now, everyone following their own initiating guru. So, point is that you would think that for most devotees, they would have come to the light or come to their senses after so many years of seeing so many mishaps in Iskcon with the initiating gurus. Again, these gurus are voted into the position. Prabhupada clearly states, we have a statement that guru is never to be voted in by any ecclesiastical board. In fact, let's take a look at that quote. Mundane votes have no jurisdiction to elect a Vaishnava Acharya. A Vaishnava Acharya is self-effulgent, and there is no need for any court judgment. Purport of Madhya 1.220. So, okay, in the next verse, his idea was Acharya was not to be nominated amongst the governing body. Prabhupada referring to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. So Prabhupada clearly says that, a Vaishnava Acharya, initiating spiritual master, should not be voted into the position. He actually has to be authorized by his spiritual master, and he has to have the qualification. First, he has to have the qualifications of being a pure devotee, free of any material motives and material desires, and then, he has to be authorized by his spiritual master. So in Iskcon there's this system where they're just voting in, these gurus, and if it was just electing, actually the voting idea came from part of Prabhupada's system. Prabhupada set up a system where the GBC could actually vote in other, Ritvik or officiating acharyas, representatives to perform the function. So Prabhupada said others may be added. They said if, he should be first class, he should be ideal. Let's take a look at that one. Yeah, actually this statement is from Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he was this famous recording, what's called known as the Topanga Kanya Confession, where Tamal Krishna Goswami admitted that Prabhupada never appointed 11 initiating gurus, that they were only intended to be Ritviks, although he again did a flip-flop and then said, well, actually, let's, instead of just having 11, let's have unlimited gurus. So that's when they made another compromise. So, but here in this statement, he says that Prabhupada said about the Ritviks, others may be added. That's where we talk about the election process. So, quoting from Tamal Krishna, later on there was a piled up list of people to get initiated, and it was jammed up. I said, Srila Prabhupada, you once mentioned about Ritviks. I don't know what to do. We don't want to approach you, but there's hundreds of devotees named, and I'm just holding all the letters. I don't know what you want to do. Srila Prabhupada said, all right, I will appoint so many, and he started to name them. He made it very clear that they are his disciples. At that point, it was very clear in my mind that they were his disciples. Later, I asked him 2 questions. One, what about Brahmananda Swami? I asked him this because I happen to have an affection for Brahmananda Swami. So Srila Prabhupada said, no, not unless he is qualified. Before I got ready to type the July 9th letter, I asked him, 2, Srila Prabhupada, is this all, or do you want to add more? He said, as is necessary, others may be added. So this is where this idea of the election. In fact, there's another one that I had in mind, another quote that I want to show you about this in this regard also. Prabhupada, so there is no question of changing GBC. Satsvarup, no. Prabhupada, rather one who is competent, he can be selected to act by the board of the GBC. Tamal Krishna, of course. If someone has a fall down, just like in the past, some GBC men have fallen down. Prabhupada, he should be replaced. Tamal Krishna, then he should be replaced. But that's a serious fall down, not some minor discrepancy. Prabhupada, they must be all ideal Acharya-like. In the beginning we have done for working. Now we should be very cautious. Anyone who is deviating, he can be replaced. So right here, Prabhupada says they should be Acharya-like, they can be replaced. This was in Vrindavan, May 28, 1977, just a few months before Prabhupada's physical departure. And they were hashing out the future system of management of how initiations would go on in the future. So, Prabhupada, he referred to this on quite a few times, referred to this zonal system, and he was appointing GBCs to manage everything. And here he says, he's talking about the Ritviks, these Ritvik representatives, they can be replaced. So, they can be voted, that position can be voted in. But as we just saw in the previous verse, an initiating spiritual master, a Diksha Guru, there's no question of voting an initiating guru. Voting is for Ritvik representatives officiating, what's called, Prabhupada also called to officiating Acharya. It was another term that Prabhupada used for Ritvik representative. So like here, obviously he's saying he should be Acharya-like. But he's not. That means that he's not the Acharya. He should be Acharya-like, a representative. That's what officiating means, and that's what Ritvik means, is to act as a priest, as a representative of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada said that position is replaceable. It can be. Elections can be conducted by the GBC for that. But the GBC, they totally tossed out the whole system of Prabhupada's zones, and instead they replaced it with this multiple guru system of electing gurus. And they took the election process, which was intended for Ritvik representatives, and instead they elected these gurus. Men are elected by a voting board. The voting board of GBC gurus has elected each other, mostly, probably 90% of them are all initiating gurus themselves. So they've all elected each other into this position. It's kind of like a club, sort of like a buddy club, and if you're part of the gang, you can get voted into this position and take this position. And then, so many times persons are exposed as being, they're engaged in gross sense gratification, homosex, this sex, child molestation, so many different such occurrences. So there's been so many different scandals that have occurred in Iskcon, and so many gurus have come and gone. So these are the ones that have been exposed. We don't know what is actually going behind the scene. We can't tell what everyone is doing. So a lot of devotees may think that, well, my guru is okay. Maybe there's some other ones that have fallen down and so on, but mine's okay. But the thing is that all the gurus have conspired, are complying with this system that opens the door to, anybody taking this position to be worshipped as good as God, and when one is still having material desires and still subject to fall down. So So originally I said you would think that most devotees it would be pretty clear cut. You know, you would see like, well, how could Prabhupada have authorized this? Guru is supposed to be like a pure devotee, you know, in the strictest sense. Of course, we know Prabhupada used the term guru in different ways. You know, sometimes he said anybody can be a guru, even a child. All they have to do is say chant Hare Krishna and they're a guru. So that's using guru in the loose sense of the term, but in the strict sense, Prabhupada, when he's talking about a spiritual master, sometimes he makes that distinction that no one should become a spiritual master unless they're an Uttama Adhikari, unless they're on the first class platform, and unless they've been directly authorized a specific direction to initiate, which Prabhupada said he received from Bhaktisiddhanta. Here's the quote. He's asking, when did you become the spiritual master of Krishna consciousness? Prabhupada, when my Guru Maharaj ordered me. This is the Guru Parampara. Indian, did it Prabhupada? Try to understand, don't go very speedily. A guru can become guru when he's ordered by his guru. That's all. Otherwise, nobody can become guru. So people will say, well, Prabhupada said everybody become guru. You know, Lord Chaitanya says, Amara Jnana, everyone, become guru, become a preacher. So that actually is referring to just being a preacher. It doesn't mean to become worshipped and sit on a big throne and accept disciples and have them worship your feet and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it could if one was actually qualified and they received this direct order. But, if it was just an open order, then why did Prabhupada say this about his godbrothers? He says right here, actually, amongst my godbrothers, no one is qualified to become Acharya. It is better not to mix with my godbrothers very intimately, because instead of inspiring our students and disciples, they may sometimes pollute them. So this was in 1974. Prabhupada was advising not even to associate with his godbrothers. And he said, let us not make the same mistake in our Iskcon camp. Let's look back to the beginning of this statement. This is a very significant statement because Prabhupada was well aware of what could happen in the future, and he forewarned of this clearly many times, and this is one of the very precise examples. In the latter days of my Guru Maharaj, he was very disgusted. Actually, he left this world earlier, otherwise he would have continued to live for more years. Still, he requested his disciples to form a strong governing body for preaching the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He never recommended anyone to be Acharya of the Gaudiya Math. But Sridhar Maharaj is responsible for disobeying this order of Guru Maharaj, and he and others who are already dead unnecessarily thought that there must be one Acharya. If Guru Maharaj could have seen someone who was qualified at that time to be Acharya, he would have mentioned. Because on the night before he passed away, he talked of so many things, but he never mentioned an Acharya. His idea was Acharya was not to be nominated amongst the governing body. Again, there you go, no nominations, no votes. He said openly, you make a GBC and conduct the mission. So his idea was amongst the members of GBC who would come out successful and self-effulgent, Acharya would be automatically selected. So Sridhar Maharaj and his two associate gentlemen unauthorizedly selected one Acharya and later approved the failure. The result is now everyone is claiming to be Acharya, even though they may be Kanishta Adhikari with no ability to preach. And some of the camps, the Acharya is being changed 3 times a year. Therefore, we may not commit the same mistake in our Iskcon camp. Actually, amongst my godbrothers, no one is qualified to become Acharya. So, if it's a law of disciplic succession that one automatically can become Acharya when their spiritual master passes away, then why does Prabhupada say all of his godbrothers were not even qualified to become Acharya? Because it's not just simply a question of the spiritual master passing away. One has to also be qualified. They have to have the qualification of Uttama Adhikari, and they have to have the authorization, the direct order. So we just saw in the previous verse that Prabhupada said Bhaktisiddhanta gave him that direct order. But amongst his godbrothers, evidently no one else was given that order. Prabhupada was the only person, according to Prabhupada, that received that order. So he says here, let us not make the same mistake in our Iskcon camp, rubber stamping gurus and unqualified persons to become acharyas. But that is exactly what has happened. In the same way that he says here that it was Sridhar Maharaj, the disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, that deviated Bhaktisiddhanta's mission, Similarly, Tamal Krishna Goswami could be attributed in the same way, that he was very much influential in what took place after Prabhupada's departure in this whole system of, first it was the zonal Diksha gurus, and then they opened it up to, not just 11, but 100 plus Diksha gurus, and did exactly what Prabhupada said, let us not do. Let us be careful not to do the same mistake. So the history says that some of Prabhupada's leading disciples, like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, went to went against Prabhupada's instructions and went to associate with the Gaudiya Math, Prabhupada's godbrothers, and they took the same ideology from them. There must be some physically present guru. They adopted the same ideology to Iskcon that Prabhupada had warned about. So this idea that there must be a physically present guru, the guru must be physically present. But you would think that to most devotees, this stuff would be pretty clear cut that actually Prabhupada is the real one. He's the one we're worshiping. He's the one whose books we're reading. He's the one who's undoubtedly a pure devotee. And he should be the one that everybody accepts as the initiating guru. You would think that most devotees, it would be pretty clear cut to them, but apparently it's not. I mean, most devotees are just go along with the crowd. They're just going along with the popular opinion. So how could this be? Well, it's Kali Yuga. And for another thing, I will admit, although some devotees do not admit it, some devotees say, oh, it's very clear Prabhupada gave this instruction as there in the July 9th letter, which I agree. I mean, for me, it's clear enough. For other devotees, it's clear enough. You would think for most devotees, it would be clear enough. You have this July 9th letter that says to continue the system henceforward. You have Prabhupada's will that says only his initiated disciple can be managers of the Iskcon properties, forever into the future. And that is only possible with a Ritvik system of initiation. And then you have, so many statements of Prabhupada that let us not make the same mistakes, that the guru must be a first-class, pure devotee, that he must have a direct instruction. You have so many evidences, so many indications, but for most devotees, they just don't get it, really. They're just too much influenced by all of the the rationale of the whole so-called living guru philosophy that you have to have. So most devotees are bought into this whole living guru philosophy, and they don't take the time to really study through this stuff. They don't really look at it very closely, or they just don't want to really understand it. So, but sometimes, I will admit that this whole instruction requires you to, you got to look at, everything. You got to take it all together. Because if you just look at the July 9th letter by itself, I will admit that to me, the July 9th letter is more or less open to interpretation. And I believe that that's how Krishna arranged it. Prabhupada wanted not blind followers. He wanted devotees to use their intelligence and to inquire. This is part of spiritual, discipline, and being a disciple, being a follower, inquiring, understanding, getting the knowledge, trying to, dig into Prabhupada's books and into his teachings and trying to understand things clearly. So it appears that it's a test of one's, sincerity, a test of one's, intelligence and surrender, that one has to really use some intelligence to try to understand this, investigate this. Because, if you just read the July 9th letter by itself, most people just don't get it. It's not really, that clearly spelled out. I will say that most devotees will say, well, I don't agree that it's clearly spelled out for 99% of most devotees because they don't get it. So the July 9th letter, of course, Prabhupada could have been a lot more specific in this letter. The letter was penned by Tamal Krishna Goswami, but Prabhupada signed it. So some people try to put it off and say, it's not Prabhupada's words, but Prabhupada's signature is on it, so it's as good as Prabhupada's words. It's written by his secretary on behalf of Prabhupada with Prabhupada's authorized signature. So we cannot use this argument that it's not written by Prabhupada. It's Prabhupada's authorized letter that was intended for the whole society. So this letter when you put it all together with everything, it makes clear sense for some of us, but not for most devotees. Most devotees are still bewildered. They still don't get it. That, oh, this, because so Prabhupada could have, the letter could have been more precise and more clear. It could have said specifically, after my departure, this will be the system. I will continue to remain the initiating spiritual master into the future, even beyond my physical presence. It could have said exactly more precisely like that. It would have avoided, so much of this confusion that's going on. But evidently, we can't always understand exactly what is Krishna's plan. And that's the way I see it. It's part of Krishna's plan. It's like a test for devotees to not be blind followers, not to just follow out of sentiment or follow blindly or just follow the popular opinion. Devotees have to use, each and every devotee is to test for each devotee to use their own intelligence and to try to understand Prabhupada's teaching. So when you put it all together, it makes clear enough sense for some of us, but not most devotees. So apparently most devotees are just covered over by these desires to just be part of the group, be part of the club, or to have followers. All the things actually that we pray to every day during the Shikshastika prayer, Nadanam Najanam Nasundanim Kavikam Vajagadisha Kamare, that I have no desire for fame, followers, fortune, wealth, beautiful women, all these things. But ironically, many of us are apparently in Iskcon for these things, because we do want name and fame. We want followers. We want recognition. We want to be part of the group. We want to be part of the club. We want to have friends. So, in one sense, it's okay. We need that support. We need association. We do want to have association and mentors and friends. But if we do it blindly and we're just, being part of the group, we're not really that serious about our spiritual life, but we're more just interested in being part of a group and part of a club and being accepted and getting followers. If that's our main motivation, then we're not gonna get it. We're gonna be covered over by all these kind of bogus arguments that, Prabhupada can't be the guru, he's gone. This is a very basic the most basic understanding, the ABCs of spiritual life, is that we're not this body. And so what to speak of the spiritual master who is eternal, the spiritual master who's a manifestation of God? We are trying to limit Prabhupada to the physical presence, saying that Prabhupada can no longer do this, he can no longer do that because he's not physically present, is a very short-sighted understanding. The spiritual master is all-powerful, and Krishna can empower him to do whatever is necessary according to the time, place, and circumstances. So Prabhupada may be the first a spiritual master in the history of our parampara that we are aware. Well, let me take that back. That's not actually, I believe there are other historical references of similar, there are in the parampara references of the spiritual master not being physically present, the initiating spiritual master. That's why you have in the Guru Parampara that's listed in the Bhagavad Gita, what is it, 30? This is over the course of millions of years, going all the way back to the sun god, and it's supposed to be this Parampara goes back to like the beginning of creation, Brahma, so we're talking a huge amount of time, but there's only 30-something prominent Acharyas are listed there. So there is evidently other historical precedences of where the initiating spiritual master is not always physically present. So, but Prabhupada did many unprecedented things, and Prabhupada initiated women, had women living together with men and preaching on the street, and so many examples of things that Prabhupada did that made adjustments to this mission according to time, place, and circumstances. So to say that Prabhupada can't be the guru anymore, he can't initiate and accept disciples anymore, is just like a really huge misunderstanding, a really misconception, a really limited understanding of the power of the spiritual master, what he is able to do. He is empowered by God to do what is ever necessary. And Prabhupada is really the first in our history to, spread this movement all around the world and to establish, writings and books for thousands of years to come that are translated into many different languages, and to establish his Murti in hundreds of temples around the world. No other Acharya in at least our recent history has done this. So it is, you could say, Prabhupada's unprecedented. His accomplishments are unprecedented. So Prabhupada he set up this system, he put the evidences there, and he left it to each individual's a test to each individual to use their own intelligence and not to simply follow blindly and be misled. Even it's nice. I mean, I understand we want to think that these are Prabhupada's disciples. They've done so much service, and we have to put our faith in them. We have to believe in them, what they say, and follow them. But no, actually, Prabhupada is the one that we really have to foremost follow before anybody else. Others, we could offer our respects and follow accordingly as far as they are in line with Prabhupada. But just because someone, was a follower or disciple of Prabhupada for years doesn't mean have the perfect understanding either. So, any case, I think I'll just leave it at that. We'll continue on the next episode, looking at this from different angles. There's so many ways that so many different quotes from Prabhupada on this issue. So thank you for listening, and Hare Krishna and Jai, all glories to Prabhupada.